Welcome to Earthtide Studios. I'm Zach Knight, and in today's video, we're going to run through another 3 awesome guitar production tips to use in your songs. We're going to look at upping your game with feedback layers, what is quad tracking, and spicing up your productions with some fake high octaves. We also have a free vocal production course that teaches you the basics of recording, editing, and mixing your vocals. If you want that, just click the link below, and we've just dropped a new website as well. But for now, let's get into Cubase. Let's have a look at a couple of awesome guitar production techniques that you can use in your mixes and in your songs to make things sound special. The first tip I'm going to show you is feedback layers. Now, this is a cool little idea that I used on this production of the song Phoenix by Color and Shade, heavily influenced by bands like While She Sleeps and Beartooth and a lot of old rock and metal productions, which just really loved the sound of those ringing guitars feeding back like nothing else, getting into this, building up for a big section, or even just providing this huge, big, dense layer of weirdness and hype sitting behind in the mix. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you what it sounds like with just the feedback guitars on their own running, with all of the effect versions of them running as well. Let's have a listen. It's pretty cool, it's pretty intense, and it's definitely adding a lot of character to this part of the song. What I'll do is I'll just play the whole song without these feedback guitars in this section here, and you can see how all of a sudden it just loses a whole lot of body and a whole lot of intensity coming into it.
To bring me back and find me. This fear was mine, and these flames, but now the table turns. Whoa, they can't contain me. I will ignite the
And now I'll put the feedback guitars back in again.
to bring me back and find me now. This fear was mine, and these flames, but now the table turns. Whoa, they can't contain me. I will ignite.
It really brings a lot of intensity to that whole section there, building up to that. So let's have a look at what's being done here and how you can get these kind of feedback guitars in your own production. So the first thing I want to note is that these were actually all recorded utilizing a Kemper in the studio with a guitar. There was no live amps used. This was just recorded DI, and it's actually really not that hard to do. So what I've done is I was using a passive pickup guitar. You can use active, it doesn't really matter. Make sure you're ideally using a guitar with humbucker pickups if you really want to be able to make sure you get like good, consistent feedback. And make sure your guitar is really nice and in tune, because if you want the feedback to match the harmonic response of the fundamental of the chords that you're sort of having run with the actual music itself, over that the feedback is sort of supporting underneath, you want your guitar to be feeding back nicely and in tune to a certain point. I mean, obviously the feedback itself doesn't necessarily have too much of a specific note to it, but definitely if the guitar is in tune, it's going to help a lot more. So you can see here that we have 13 different tracks of feedback. And what I've done for each different one of these is I had the guitar and I held the note that I wanted to hold, or I just held like an open chord or a harmonic. I had the volume cranked on the monitors with the guitar profile that I was using on my Kemper, and I played the chord, and then I just moved the guitar forwards and backwards until I found a sweet spot close to the actual monitor itself and had the pickup pointing towards the monitor. And then I basically just held the guitar there until I found the sweet spot that the feedback sounded nice at, and then held it there for as long as it was able to hold that note. If you want to have any cool, interesting, different sounds with like flutters and things, the easiest way to do that is to physically actually move the guitar. You can either do it like in time with the song, or just randomly move it different ways until you find like a nice way that it flutters. And then basically from there, it's just a matter of recording enough takes until you have a nice big wall of sound. In this particular case, you can see that we have 13 in total that were recorded, and they all sound very different to each other. So I'll just bypass all the processing that's running on this on the feedback bus first, and we can just have a listen to what each of them is doing. I've got some panning going as well. They're going left, right, left, left, right, center, left, right, left, right, right. And basically what I'm doing is I'm filling up the stereo space all the way left, all the way right, and then bringing it in just a little bit and then having a few sitting in the center. That's just the way that I decided to have it panned so that they would fill up as much of the stereo space as possible. But you could definitely have, say, for instance, every single one of these except for one all the way left and all the way right if you wanted your feedback to just sit all the way super stereo. But I wanted it to sort of somewhat take up the whole space within the frequency scope that it was sitting in for the whole stereo space to give that sort of larger than life feedback layer sound. So let's have a listen to some of these feedback layers individually on their own. And you can see that there's actually some fading that's been done on them as well. So I actually got it fading in all the way up to this point here. As I've said, I'm building it up, because if you take that away, this is what it actually sounds like. And then it fades out there. And then we'll have a listen to this other one. And then we'll listen to this one down here. I might just not remove that fade in there. Those are some of the lower ones. There's some pretty crazy feedback on that one. That one sort of doesn't really fade feedback too much until the end. Gets pretty crazy and goes weird at the end there, but that's why it's fading out. That one's sort of a bit more nice and tonal. And that's pretty similar to the other one. And then I believe these ones down here are a little bit crazier. Yeah, they just get a little bit more intense. So as you can see, some of them are really, really super intense. Some of them are a little bit less kind of feedbacky and more lower and tonal and just sound a bit more like the fundamental chord itself. And some of the guitar just sitting there and resonating with, just the main strings that the main tuning that it's sitting at. So it's really a matter of just playing around with it and getting it to the sweet spot that you want it at, and then building it up from there. So all of those combined with no mixing sounds like this. Pretty cool. And you can see I've got some automation running here as well on the actual feedback bus, where I'm building the volume up to the apex here where it's getting to 0 dB. And then at this point here, where I have everything kick in the song, I have an abrupt push all the way down to -infinity, because I want all of the volume to be cut off with that when it kicks in for the second part of the verse there, where everything kicks into the heavy part and I want the feedback to stop. However, I don't actually have the feedback completely stopping because I also have it being sent off to some cool reverbs here, and it actually continues on, and all that's left is the reverb trail of that. So if we listen to that now, the initial sound of all the feedback just abruptly ends, and all we're left with is this nice, cool, modulated reverb trail, which I'm utilizing Valhalla Room here on this big vocal hall setting here for 8 seconds, and cutting off some high end there and some low end with FabFilter Pro Q2. And I'm also using Valhalla Shimmer on this big reverse setting here, which is really kind of providing that nice little like high-end shimmery kind of sound, cutting off some low-end and some high-end there as well. And I'm also using my favorite secret source plugin, which is Black Hole by Earthtide. You can have a look at these settings if you like. And then I'm cutting off some low-end and some high-end there as well, filtering those really, really over-the-top reverbs, simply because it's a good idea to help that control that in the mix. In terms of the actual feedback layers themselves, I've actually gone through and I've notched out a whole bunch of really bad frequencies that are just getting over the top. And I'll show you what it sounds like with and without this EQ. Basically what I've done is I've gone through and found the really, really over-the-top peaks in the feedback there and removed the ones that were getting in the way of the vocal in the mix. Obviously, when you're dealing with feedback, you are literally dealing with frequencies that are feeding back with each other. So there is going to be things that just get way out of hand. And so if you are having vocals and all like other things running in your mix, you want to try and notch those out a little bit. And, you know, we can see we've gone up to like minus 15 dB with some of these notches here simply because it was needed. And then I'm rolling off the low end and rolling off the high end at 7,000 because I want this feedback to sit outside of the scope of some of the other stuff with the rest of the guitars. And I've also got some limiting going on here just to control the volume because as you can see with all the different feedbacks, there's different levels of volume running through with all of those tracks. So I want that to be controlled. Let's have a look. The attenuation doesn't really happen until the very, very end there. And this is also being used as a bit of a volume boost. Technique number 2 to look at is quad tracking. Now, quad tracking is a really cool way for you to be able to thicken up a section of your rhythm guitars or whatever part you're choosing to quad track to make it sound much bigger and larger than life. Now, effectively what quad tracking is it's recording the same part 4 times. Normally rhythm guitars are usually just double tracked, one left and one right. And however, when you're quad tracking, you're actually doing 2 performances for the left side and 2 performances for the right side. And I'll just give you a quick example of what that sounds like. Let's listen to the chorus of this song, Therapy by Color and Shade.
God, I know it's not a game.
So you can hear that those guitars sound really big and full in that chorus. So these are the main guitars here, the main left and right guitars here, and these are the quad track guitars. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute all of the vocals in this song, and we're going to have a listen to what it sounds like with just the music, and we'll turn off the quad track guitars, and then we'll bring them back in the chorus. Let's have a listen. Now, it's quite subtle, and the reason being is because I didn't want these quad tracks to be really, really over the top and get in the way of the main rhythm guitars. They're there to provide support. So what's basically happened here is when recording this song, we've recorded 2 takes for the left side and 2 takes for the right side. And they've all been reamped, and these were actually reamped with the same guitar profile as the left and right here. Often in reamping, sometimes what you'll do for your quad-tracked guitars is you'll reamp them with a different reamp profile or reamp them with a different amp, simply because you want to get a slightly different characteristic of tone to help these guitars blend together and provide a sort of nice, different, fuller, larger-than-life style guitar tone. But in this particular case, on this production, we just went with the same amp on both of them because we like the sound of that. Props to Chris the Melko from Monolith Studios for doing that reamp as well. It was fantastic. So what I'll do is I'll bypass the octaves here. We're just going to have a listen to what it sounds like with just the rhythm guitars and the rest of the song running. And I'll bypass the quads and we'll listen to that again now. You can hear when I turn the quad tracks off, it just loses a little bit of definition there and it loses a little bit of power. That's why quad tracks have been utilized over this chorus here. The other thing to note about them as well is that the main rhythm guitars have been sitting at 0 dB on both the left and the right side. The quad tracks, however, are quieter. They're sitting at -5 dB and they've been panned in to left 80 and right 80. And the reason that they're doing that is because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the guitars to help fill up more of the space of the mix in a nice, clear, defined way and get that stereo sound of the guitar sounding fuller. If the quad tracks were panned all the way to the left and all the way to the right, effectively they would, as much as they're a different performance, so there are small differences going on there, you know, with the fact that the left quad track guitar and the right quad track guitar were different performances played in. So they do sound a little bit different, and those nuances and the differences of performance is helping them sound different to the other guitars. If they were panned all the way to the left and all the way to the right, they just wouldn't quite sound as full and would be fighting the space of the main left and main right rhythm guitar. So what I'll do is I'm just going to pan them all the way to the left and all the way to the right. We can have a listen to what they sound like versus before when they were panned 80 left and 80 right. And now we'll put them back to where they were before and have a listen to them now with the adjusted panning. Sounds much nicer, much fuller, and fills up the space in that mix a lot better. So that's effectively quad tracking guitars, and it's a really good way to be able to help fill out your rhythm guitars in your productions. As you can see in this song, I've used quad track guitars on all of the choruses and on the breakdown as well, but I've left it alone on the verses. So you can see, for instance, we've got this section here. This is the build up in the bridge, which is a bit quieter. Compared to when it kicks in here for the breakdown. Another great example of using quad tracking. Now, one thing you do need to be careful of with quad tracking your guitars is making sure that you don't have quad tracked guitars for all the rhythm guitar parts in the entire song. So you can see in this bridge here, I only have the left and right guitar, And in this verse here and in this verse here, I only have the left and right guitar running as well. Now, the reason I have that as that, rather than quad tracking these as well, is because dynamics. If I had quad tracked guitars for every single performance, there would not be any room for the guitars to sound larger and bigger in the mix than they would be if there were some parts that were double tracked and some parts that were quad tracked. Because as much as quad track guitars will sound larger and bigger and fuller than double tracked guitars, if everything is quad tracked, nothing can sound bigger. So you need to think about dynamics when you've got your productions going on. So as much as I think that quad tracking guitars is a fantastic thing for you to do to be able to make a certain section sound bigger, don't do it for your entire production. Otherwise, nothing's going to sound smaller and nothing's going to sound bigger. It's all going to sound the same, and your production will sound just a little bit monotonous. Now for something completely different, let's have a look at tip 3 and creating fake octaves with your guitars. So this is a cool little technique that I've utilized in a lot of different productions, but primarily in trap and pop stuff, where I actually adjust the pitch of the guitar to sort of help create this different high-pitched kind of weird sound going on with the guitars to add another cool little element to the productions. So we're going to have a listen to what we've got here for this song. This is a trap song called Fake Hands that I've done a production of. Let's have a listen.
What is going through your head? You want to poison like my lead. Fake love from the people I know. Fake hands, y'all. Fake it till I make it, so I pick up my guitar case. Set it down and lock down. Write 1,000 fucking hooks. Yeah, you better listen now. All I'm dreaming is a stage. People better know my name. Turn my words into a wage. Put some money on my grave.
So you can hear some pretty cool guitar stuff going on in there, but it's pretty consistent across the board. I've got some interesting stuff going on here with the vocoder, but otherwise it's pretty consistent and sounds somewhat the same going across the whole thing. So what I'm going to do now is we'll jump to this section of the song here at the end, and you note that I've duplicated all of these left and right guitars here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a small adjustment, get rid of all of the plugins on them currently. And we're going to rename these ones pitch left, pitch right, left 2, pitch right 2. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to solo these guitars, and we're going to put an instance of Little Altar Boy on all of them. Now, to put it on all of them at the same time, I'm going to hold in Alt and Shift to activate Q-Link in Cubase. Bang. All 4 of them have been put on at the same time. So what we're going to do now is I want to adjust them all. Let's do this. And we're going to just leave one of them open, and I'm actually going to adjust the pitch and the formant of all of them and bring the drive up a little bit. And now what this is going to do is it's going to distort those guitars and pitch them all up an octave and also adjust the formant too. So now that I've got Little Altar Boy on all of those guitars and I've pitched them up an octave, let's have a listen to them and make some adjustments as we go. So I like it how it sounds on the higher end of that guitar, but I'm not really liking how it sounds for these lower notes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just mute those. And now let's have a listen to what it sounds like with the main guitar and all of these ones pitched up an octave. Just turn them down as well because they are quite loud compared to the main guitar there, but it's providing this cool little weird hyped up version of the guitars that's sounding kind of a little bit distorted and a little bit formanty as well, because I've got the formant being pushed up on all of them as well. I've got some drive going there, and they're sitting at 100% wet. Let's see what it sounds like with the rest of the mix with those extra weird pitch guitars running.
Fake it till I make it, so I pick up my guitar case. Set it down and lock down, write 1,000 fucking hooks. Yeah, you better listen now. All I'm dreaming is a stage. People better know my name. Turn my words into a wage. Put some money on my grave.
So I kind of like the little vibe that's going on there, but I don't know that I want them to come in all at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut them out for the first half of the last chorus there, and then have them only come in here on these last bits here. And I'm just going to turn them up just a little bit. And I'm also going to put a bit of a cool little delay on them as well. Let's send them off to the instrument delay, but make them louder in the instrument delay. So those ones will sound just a little bit weirder and louder. Actually, we'll do another instance of it because I have some automation running on it there. So let's just send them up to the instrument delay again on their own. And we'll play this last chorus again with those cool fake high octaves coming in.
Dark case. Set it down and lock down, write 1,000 fucking hooks. Yeah, you better listen now. All I'm dreaming is a stage. People better know my name. Turn my words into a wage. Put some money on my grave.
So you can hear that it's providing this cool, weird, high-endy sound that's happening with the guitars there. It's not providing anything strange and super left to center, just giving it a cool little extra pizzazz up there with that high end for those guitars. Just, we're a little bit of fun. We're going to go totally nuts with it now, and we're going to put an instance of Camel Crusher on those. And we're also going to put an instance of Decapitator as well. And we're going to really drive the hell out of it just for fun. And then we're going to put an instance of Pro Q after that and filter that quite a lot. And now let's have a listen to how those high-end guitars sound. And what I'll do is I'll duplicate this across to the other channels. This is going to sound very over the top, just for fun. Now that I've adjusted the EQ of Pro Q3 to make sure that those high guitars are going to actually sit in a frequency scope where they're going to be a little bit more discernible, let's have a listen to how they're sounding with all that saturation and distortion. Kind of cool, a little bit strange. They're a touch quieter than I thought they need to be, but what we'll do is we'll play that with the rest of the chorus and have a listen to how it sounds.
Dark case. Set it down and lock down, write 1,000 fucking hooks. Yeah, you better listen now. All I'm dreaming is a stage. People better know my name. Turn my words into a wage. Put some money on my grave.
Little bit loud, let's bring it down in the mix.
Dark case. Set it down and lock down, write 1,000 fucking hooks. Yeah, you better listen now. All I'm dreaming is a stage. People better know my name. Turn my words into a wage. Put some money on my grave.
Kind of cool. So that's a really cool, interesting way that you can use pitch guitars to help adjust your productions and make things sound a little bit cooler. It's not something that you want to sort of put everywhere. It's like a little bit of a kind of ear candy thing that you can do as a guitar technique in your productions. Could be useful for many different styles. This is just one way of using it. So there you go. Another 3 hot guitar tips for you to use in your productions. Personally, my favorite one out of those is the feedback layers. There's so many cool creative things you can do with that. And there's a lot of really awesome songs out there that I love that use that production technique. But I'd love to hear from you about what you do with guitars in your productions to make them special. Throw a comment below and let me know. Don't forget about our free vocal production course, and let me know what other videos you'd like to see. But for now, take it easy.
Burn it down and bring the